You're live. Thanks, guys. So, just do it with your own studio for now. For now, while I wait for you guys to show up, maybe I'm a minute early. No music really. Timer. Got the timer. And got my reference set up. If it wasn't so expensive to be on the data plan, let's try to do that today. Let's try to set up an Instagram feed. You may want to see this. Sharpen your pencils. Sharpen your pencils! No idea if it's going to work. And it's worth a try. So that's the setup, guys. You guys on YouTube, I'm going to zoom into what I'm drawing here. But that's the model I'm using. If you want it, it's available on the website. It's from Friday's class. Probably say that. Just like getting the screen ready here. Just gonna get ready for the model time. You can see I got a lovely new haircut here. So I'm gonna work vertical today. It looks to me that the image that we're using up here of Ryan is taller than it is skinny, or taller than width, and so it looks to be about 4:3 ratio. So 4 heads tall by 3 heads wide, about. So I'll set myself up this way. Now, let's see if we can bring this Instagram view a little closer. We need an extension cable. Let's hope this works. All right. So that's it. Hey. Let's see. This is still live here. Camera difficulties. Camera difficulties. See now if that's live. Live view. Okay, we're back here. Keep this off. Come on. Says we're connected. I don't see myself. Oh, there I am. Okay. Sweet. This is all based off trusting technology. And you know what? I'm on free Wi-Fi, so I wouldn't be surprised if this just drops on me. So let's get closer to Bunny. Fairly good view where we're not staring just at my head. I'll have a look here in a second. Okay. It's meta. You can see me down here as well. So get yourself situated. Get yourself comfy. It's going tighter. Tighter still. Try not to bump this the whole time. A little tighter. I'm going to bring this TV a little closer. Because why not? Maybe we can kill any bird with one stone here. Alright. Oh god, that's close. That is close. That might be too close for me. I still got to pretend I'm looking out into the world. Alright. So, my pencils, eraser, down in front of me. Timer, 20. What? The model's not going to know, right? As long as you stay still. And a nice sharpened pencil. That's how they should be. And you can watch the Atelier Artista video on how to do that properly. I never want to see someone come to my class again without sharpened pencils. That's why I made that video, and hopefully people will use them. So I'm just going to take measurements. You can see down here on the laptop the image that I'm using. Of course, I'm looking much bigger, and I'm trying to look outside of myself as if the model is, he's about the size as if he was 10 or 15 feet away from me on the model stand. Pretending at least. Right? Alright, I'm going to decide on a center line for the composition. And I would probably go from this finger up this arm because it's already so straight. I could also go from like the middle finger through the olecranon or his elbow here because that would also touch the armpit. And when I drop a center line, a plumb line, I tend to like to hit a few points. So I'm just, you can't see, but I'm holding up my stick and just measuring on the model away from me. Maybe you guys on Instagram can see. So I'm just going to drop that line lightly. I don't need this to be huge, dark. It doesn't even have to be perfectly straight. It's something that I'm going to eventually erase. There is about 4 heads tall. I'm just going to start by being boxy here. And then I'm going to limit myself to where I'm going. And right now, it's kind of by feel. So chopping off big areas. In classical, this is your envelope. You want to have a good lay-in. Gotta have something to react to. Respond to, measure from, judge against. I can't play music, so you're going to have to, if you want, turn something on, otherwise you're going to have to listen to me talk to myself. And that is not, you don't want to be inside my head, trust me. Run through the form. This foot points to the other hand. And that other hand falls within this head distance here. So, forgot I wanted to record this. There you go. Okay. Now I'm recording. I'm using, if anyone else wants to do live cast like this, I'm using my DSLR camera patched through a USB cable into my laptop using a free piece of software called OBS, which is Open Broadcasting System. It's capturing the image as a Windows screen capture from my laptop, from the camera, into the software, and then you hit stream. Then you go to your YouTube channel and you put the streaming data in that they give you, and then if all that works and you're on your Wi-Fi, you can go live. This has been an interesting time for learning curves, for sure, but it's necessary. It's always good to be learning new stuff, including drawing. So I'm not sure how contrasty that is, if you can see it. I like to draw really light in the beginning anyways, because it's kind of non-committal at this point. Just getting the shapes in. I really like what this leg is doing. Now I'm going to just check. I've got a big block in. I'm just going to check and take some measurements so that I'm not committing too early to this thing. Look at that crazy hair. I'm going to try to keep my head out of your way. Okay, so head, chest, hips, what I teach. Turn around. Face. This way. Here. Here. Brows. That's what we do right here. Lighten this a little bit. Push-pull. LIVESTREAM after my center line. Can't forget where that is. Call it the armpit area. Here. Shoulder to the hand halfway is the elbow to the left and right. So that kind of gives me that distance. There's some really interesting striations. Striations. Forearm longest. We're getting some great forearm stuff in here. Okay. So the head length and the elbow right there. See the turning of the spine here. And spine. Up. Slight tilt of the hips. And perspective. Up. 30 seconds. Okay. Five-minute break, coffee or tea, whatever you might need. Don't think so. Very curious. Wow. Hank could come in, head could be bigger. Now we know. I have yet to figure out how to get this microphone to work properly. It's just coming off my laptop. So play your music. You don't have to listen to me. What I really want to do is listen to my Audible. I'm on the last hour and a half of Jocko's book. On Audible. I hope it doesn't kick me off. Yeah.
Because they are the boss.
Yeah.
That is why.
That's why.
And as the leader, they are going to get credit whether you like it or not. What are you going to do? Raise your hand and say, actually, it is I who deserves all the credit. No, that doesn't work. Asking for credit is a horrible move to make in any scenario. And in a scenario where your boss is asking for credit, it is an even worse move, because if your boss is asking for credit, it means they are likely insecure. They want the credit to build up their ego. So if you try to take it away from them, it is an attack on their ego, and they will not be happy. They will not trust you, and you will form an antagonistic relationship with them.
Let's try this.
Don't do that. Instead, let them have the credit. Don't be jealous and bitter. Accept the idea that as the boss, whatever they did or didn't do allowed the team to accomplish the mission. Maybe they just got out of everyone's way. Maybe they were micromanaging like crazy. It doesn't matter, because whatever they did, if the mission was successful, then it worked. So let them have the credit. Now, this can really bother some people. They will ask, what if the person isn't a particularly good leader, and the only reason projects are being completed is because the individual contributors on the team? My answer is, this is why we have to play the long game. Unless the leader is completely and utterly inept, which could require a mutiny, and you can refer to this section on when is mutiny in order, then the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. A marginal leader with whom you have a good relationship can be a benefit to you and the team as long as you have built trust with members. Based on that relationship, the job gets done, and the team
is to just take my kneadable eraser
gets credit.
and roll over the whole drawing to help soften everything.
Gets credit, they might get promoted,
Less committal,
regardless of the
and
skills they lack.
I have a problem with putting
And that is true.
a lot of hard
If
lines
your
in,
boss
so
leads
by doing
successful
this,
projects or
it's
missions
easier to make this soft line hard,
they probably
harder
will
to make
get
a
promoted.
hard line soft.
But remember, when they do get promoted, they will need someone to take their place. Chances are they
I'm
will
still
select
using
someone
that paper
they
from
trust
Keith,
to fill their
battling
vacancy.
the cheap paper.
Someone who has supported them.
This
Someone
lightens
who's humble
everything,
enough
so
to
you're
let
not
them get the credit they wanted
stuck
for
in
the
a
team's
trough.
effort.
So 20
If
more
you
minutes.
play the game correctly, that person will be you.
Listen to your own music,
Remember,
maybe. I
this
don't know.
promotion isn't for your own self-gain, but for the team. Once you take the boss's position,
Thanks to all
you can
those who
lead the
filled
team
out
and
that
execute the mission in the best
survey.
way possible.
I could really
Since you have trust
more
established, you will
in
continue
figuring
to
out
lead
which
your team
direction
and
to
influence your boss
allow this
so they
atelier
make
to
good
go. I'm
decisions
trying to
for the good of the team.
get some feedback from y'all.
Some people also fear that if they
It's
give their
on
boss
my
all the
website,
credit,
atelierartista.com. On
never get
the
the credit they so badly
under the
deserve.
newsletter, there's a link if you didn't get it in the mail out,
First,
or if that link didn't work for you. It did work on Safari.
The main reason you want
I don't
that
know about
credit
the rest
is to
of you guys.
satisfy your ego. Once you have done that, relax. If you are working hard and making things happen, credit will eventually come your way. Be patient.
Second guess
And
myself.
when credit you have not asked for comes your way, it is doubly valued since you simultaneously appear highly confident and humble, which is a winning combination. So if your boss wants the credit, put your ego in check and give it to them. Your humility and leadership will be rewarded in the long run. The nearly indefensible leader. It is always good to support your leader. If you undermine a leader, it not only hurts them, it hurts the morale of the troops as well as you as a subordinate leader. You are setting an example. If the example you set is one of disrespect of the chain of command, you can expect much the same from the people you are leading. When presenting a plan to your troops that you don't necessarily agree with, you could say, well, I don't agree with this plan, but it's what the boss is telling us to do, so we have to do it anyway. Clearly, that is not a good approach. They will see you don't believe in the plan, and if you don't believe in it, why should anyone on your team believe in it? And if no one believes in it, then why on earth should the team actually execute it? When a decision is made or a course of action comes down from the chain of command, you must execute it as if it were your own. Sure, you can debate your boss behind closed doors about what course of action you think is best, but once a decision is made, get on board and execute to the best of your ability. You tell the troops, the boss and I talked through this for quite a while, and when you look at it from all different angles, especially considering some of the bigger picture effects, I think this is the best solution for how we execute. Let's get it done. The way you present plans to your troops is similar to the attitude with which you treat your boss. Your boss may not make all the best decisions. He might be awkward or say the wrong things at the wrong times. Maybe the troops have a go at him and throw some verbal jabs in his direction behind his back. Do not join in that. In fact, stop it. This doesn't mean throw yourself on your sword and blindly defend him, but instead, you explain that the boss has a lot on his mind, or the boss's job is to run the company, not keep us entertained. These types of statements let your team know that while the boss isn't perfect, he still needs to be respected for the job he does. There are times when the boss can be nearly indefensible. Perhaps she is egotistical or arrogant. Maybe he is condescending to the troops, or maybe the boss makes bad decisions over and over again. In these cases, Blindly defending the boss will put you at odds with the team members. They see and know the boss is horrible, and if you blindly defend them, your credibility takes a hit. But that doesn't mean that openly belittling or disparaging them is a good option. That behavior from you leads to complete disrespect from the team and a failure of good order and discipline. You have to balance defending the boss with connecting with the troops. Here are some phrases that convey the right message. That even if you don't have the highest regard for your boss, you still value the importance of accomplishing the mission. Listen, the boss might not be perfect, but he is driving us toward the same strategic goals we want to accomplish. Or, look, the boss might not be ideal, but she still gives us the support we need. The better we perform, the more support we will get. Or, the boss has some quirks, but we know where he stands. So, we work with him to the best of our abilities, which means dealing with those quirks so we can get the job done. Or, complaining about the boss doesn't get us anywhere, and it doesn't make our jobs easier. What we can do is try to form a good relationship with her so we can influence her in the right direction. These statements balance the delicate dichotomy between simply backing the boss with unconstrained commitment and showing some level of hesitation. And that is exactly what a leader has to do when their boss is nearly indefensible. Of course, there are times when a leader becomes truly impossible to defend. Those cases are rare, but when a leader is doing things that are illegal, immoral, or unethical, or is making such bad decisions that the mission or the troops are at real risk, then it is time for the subordinate leader and the subordinates themselves to consider going above the boss in the chain of command, or even, in the absolute rarest of cases, to consider a mutiny. Stress relief. Almost every job creates some level of stress. Salespeople deal with angry clients. Police face criminals day in and day out. Construction workers face the physical hazards of their jobs and the complexities inherent in their projects. Teachers deal with unruly students. Software engineers have deadlines to meet. Food service workers contend with hostile customers flying off the handle because their steak was overcooked. Stress exists at some level in every job. When people succumb to stress, it can be extremely bad for the individual, the team, and the mission. How does a leader prevent an individual from being overstressed? The first thing a leader needs to do is something they should already be doing. Build a relationship with his or her subordinates. Why is this such a common theme in my leadership principles? Because having good relationships up and down the chain of command is one of the most important leadership elements for any successful team. And one of the reasons it is important is that it will help the leader manage the stress of his or her subordinates. As a leader, if you have a good relationship with your subordinates, you will talk to them, they will talk to you, and you will listen. There is a decent chance they will let you know if they are feeling an inordinate amount of stress. This is an obvious and straightforward way of knowing that someone on your team is feeling undue pressure. But there's also a chance they might not tell you they are feeling stressed. Perhaps they are embarrassed. Perhaps they think it will put a promotion at risk. Perhaps they feel stressed, but don't recognize the symptoms because they have never experienced it before. These are only some of the reasons your subordinates won't tell you they are stressed. This is another reason why relationships are so important. If you have a relationship with your people, you know them. If you know them, then you know when they are not acting like themselves. Perhaps they are less talkative. Maybe they are becoming easily aggravated about little things. Maybe they are looking disheveled. Whatever the change is, it is a change, and a change in behavior can be a sign of stress. Major Dick Winters, commander of the 2nd Battalion, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, made famous by the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers, which is about their exploits in the European campaign in World War II, pointed out a sign that indicated a man was reaching his breaking point. In his book, Beyond the Band of Brothers, he wrote that he knew someone was going to crack when he saw him with his helmet off and his head buried in his hands. At first, I didn't quite understand how he could have been so sure. But then I thought about what that looks like visually, and I realized he was completely right. When you see a person with their head sunken down, hanging into their hands, it is obvious they have had enough. So what do you do with a person who is struggling with stress? Give them a break. Give them a rest. Take them out of the stress-inducing environment. When Major Winters would see someone approaching their breaking point, he would assign them temporary duty away from the front lines. He wouldn't tell them he was doing it because he thought they needed rest. That might have triggered shame and made them not want to go. Instead, Major Winters would figure out some kind of task that needed to be done in the rear and then send the individual in question on the mission. I did the same thing as a platoon commander and as a task unit commander. If I saw stress start to negatively impact one of my men, I would assign him a logistics run to headquarters for a few days, or send him to liaise with a unit in a relatively nice area where he could get some rest. Like Major Winters, I wouldn't tell my men I thought they needed a break. I would tell them I had an important task that needed to get done, and I trusted them to make it happen. They would get a few days of operational downtime and come back recharged. The best way to treat combat stress and any stress is to remove the affected individual from the stress-inducing environment. After some rest, the person will usually return to their normal behavior. I liken the human mind under stress to a car when the check engine light suddenly comes on. Sure, the engine can keep going for a little while, but what the engine really needs is service. If the engine gets serviced, it will be fine and return to normal. But if the engine is not serviced and the driver continues to push it, eventually the engine will burn out and fail catastrophically. It will be completely destroyed. The same thing can happen to the human mind if kept under stress without relief. For a clear image of this, watch any film of shell-shocked soldiers from World War I. They were pushed to the limit without relief, and they broke mentally. They were no longer able to function at all. Don't allow that to happen to your people. Know them, watch them, and when they need a break, give it to them. Punishment. Punishment must be dealt out at times, but a good leader should need to use it seldomly. If a leader gives good, clear guidance about what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, why it needs to be done, and what the consequences are if it is not done correctly, the troops should carry out what has been asked of them. If for some reason your troops don't execute the plan, then of course, you should first look in the mirror. Do not assume the troops have simply decided not to do what was required of them. Instead, assume you did not give them appropriate direction, and that is the reason for the transgression. If you have confirmed that a rule was violated, or direction not followed even though it was understood, some punishment must be meted out. Again, this should be rare, because if a leader is doing his or her job correctly, members of the team will understand what, how, and why they are doing what they are doing and execute appropriately. The need to punish someone on the team is almost always a direct reflection of the leader and the failure to lead appropriately. This might seem extreme, and in fact it is. It is extreme ownership. If a team member is late, perhaps the leader failed to explain the importance of being on time. If a team member fails to complete their portion of a project, perhaps the leader didn't give the support required. If a team member drinks alcohol and gets into trouble with the police, perhaps the leader failed to set clear parameters around drinking. The list could go on indefinitely. A leader is always responsible for the actions of his or her subordinates. This could be extended even further by saying that if there is a team member who is a troublemaker, the leader should preempt trouble by removing that individual from the team. Even with complete extreme ownership in place, which will eliminate most failures to follow rules within a team, there are times where team members are negligent, malicious, or willfully disobedient. When this happens, and when lines are crossed, punishment is necessary. One key component of that statement is when lines are crossed. That means there has to actually be lines that are clearly defined and rules that are clearly understood. To punish an individual for the infraction of an unwritten rule is usually inappropriate, unless the behavior is grievous enough that any reasonable person would deem it out of line. Barring that level of violation, unless rules are clear and documented, it is difficult to punish an individual for their judgment, however far off it might be. This is not to say you as a leader cannot counsel for bad behavior. Obviously, you should. But actually punishing someone for a violation that isn't clearly defined isn't good practice. It is also good policy to lay out the consequences for violations. No one should be surprised when they receive a punishment, and knowing what they are risking in terms of punishment will eliminate much of the need for it. Once the rule and the punishment for violation have been clearly established, if the rule is broken, handling it is easy. Administer the punishment. Sure, there can be some level of circumstantial consideration, and mercy should not be seen as weakness. A leader who considers mitigating factors will be seen not as lenient, but as sensible. To show clemency is not being a pushover, it is being understanding. Those are not bad things. My SEALs sometimes broke the rules. Perhaps one got into a fight while out in town. Maybe another one didn't submit the required paperwork for a training event. Whatever the infractions, I would weigh them against the individual's historical performance. If he had a great record and the violation was uncharacteristic of his normal behavior, I would give him some slack. If the individual was a habitual rule breaker, he would receive the full punishment. If a violation has been committed and there is no legitimate reason for it or any mitigating circumstances, then simply hold the line and dispense the punishment as defined. Administering punishment is one of the less appealing parts of leadership, but it is sometimes necessary. The better you lead, the less you will need punitive action, but you will sometimes still need it. Deliver it with justice. When to quit. One of the mantras in the SEAL teams is never quit. That is one of the main refrains utilized during basic SEAL training, and it makes a lot of sense during that training because that is how you make it through. You don't quit. No matter what training evolution comes along, no matter how hard it is, no matter how tired, sore, frustrated, exhausted, or otherwise broken you are, you don't quit. That is how you make it through the training, and that is how you eventually become a SEAL. But when you get to the actual SEAL teams, that extreme attitude has to be adjusted. It has to be modulated, because if it isn't, it can lead to disaster. The classic example of this is the young SEAL leader who has made it through basic SEAL training and shows up at a SEAL team. He has heard the mantra, never quit, thousands and thousands of times. He has yelled it to his friends and whispered it to himself. It has become ingrained in his head. Now he is at a SEAL team, and he is tasked with developing a plan for a training mission. He does his best, but because he is inexperienced, the plan is marginal. After briefing his squad on the plan, they head out to execute the mission. It soon becomes evident that the plan is ineffective. Maybe he took a bad route or the wrong approach to the target, or maybe he underestimated enemy resistance. Maybe the weather was inclement and threw off their timeline. He could have misjudged any one of the countless variables that impact a mission, but whatever the variable, it has rendered the plan ineffective. But the young leader has been trained not to quit. He won't give up. He presses forward, expending all his resources, energy, and time to stay the course. Still, the squad fails the mission. But beyond failing the mission, they are completely spent or compromised and unable to do anything else. They can't even support another mission. That is wrong. He should have quit, returned to base, reformulated his plan, rested his troops, and reloaded to take another shot at executing the mission. I used to run a training problem to drive this point home to young SEAL leaders. The scenario would be in an urban environment, in a fairly large building with a long hallway with multiple rooms along it, and one large room at the end of the hallway at the opposite end from where the SEAL platoon would enter. In the room at the end of the hallway, I would emplace what we called a barricaded shooter, who would have a massive, powerful paintball gun capable of shooting devastating fire and with a virtually unlimited supply of ammunition. The barricaded shooter would also be bunkered in, meaning that he would be in a miniature pillbox built of sandbags and plywood that almost completely encased him, save for the barrel of his paintball gun, which would be sticking out of a small hole and pointed down the hallway. The SEAL platoon would be tasked with clearing the building, and inevitably, the leader would quickly come up with a fairly simple but generally straightforward and effective plan following the standard methodology, sending 2 SEALs into the hallway to clear the first room, after which they would send 2 more for the next room, then 2 more for the next room, and so on until they had all the rooms in the hallway cleared, which meant the entire building was cleared. But with this barricaded shooter in position, when the first 2 SEALs entered the hallway, they would be gunned down. The training cadre would be there to enforce the situation and would tell the first 2 SEALs they were dead, at which point they would lie down. The young SEAL leader, now hearing the commotion and the shots fired, wants to know what's going on, so he peeks through the doorway that enters the hallway. He sees the first 2 SEAls sprawled out on the ground, not moving, clearly dead.
5.
So what call to make? Give me 2 more. Go clear that first room. At this point, the next 2 SEAls in the assault force, anxious to get after it, step past the young SEAL leader and into the hallway.
Let's go.
They barely get past the other 2 dead SEAls when they too are gunned down with a murderous spray of paintball. The training cadre declares them dead as well, and they lie down on the floor. The leader once again hears this unfolding and peeks around the corner to assess. Now he sees 4 of his SEAls piled up in the hallway, covered in paintball. What does he decide to do? 2 more. Go! Hearing this, the next 2 SEAls barrel past the leader, through the door, and into the hallway, where they too are slaughtered by paintball. Now it is obvious there is a big problem. Clearly there is a devastating threat. What to do? The young SEAL leader thinks he knows. Give me 2 more, now! 2 more SEAls enter the hallway of death, and soon meet theirs, as paintballs riddle their bodies. This time, though, the leader exposes himself a little. He watches them enter the hallway and sees them get gunned down from the room at the other end. He sees the silhouette of a barricaded shooter. Now he clearly understands the situation. So what does he do? Barricaded shooter, end of the hallway, he announces, letting everyone know what is going on before giving his next order. 2 more, go! With that, 2 more SEAls enter the hallway and are promptly massacred by the barricaded shooter. Then the leader calls for 2 more, and 2 more after that, and he continues to send men until no one is left except the young SEAL leader himself. He thinks he knows what he must do, so he takes a breath, charges down the hallway, and, like the rest of his men, is hit head to toe with paintballs and dies in a blaze of glory. He was the last man. Now, everyone in his platoon is dead.
We'll put this timer
The team
right
has
here.
failed.
3 minutes. I don't know if you can see
But
it.
at least the young SEAL leader didn't quit, right? Wrong. There is a time to quit. In this training situation, once the scenario was over, I would discuss it with the young SEAL officer. We would examine the result, which was clear. The objective was not achieved, and everyone was dead. Obviously, this outcome is horrible, and he would never want it again. I would then explain to him the difference between the strategic objective and the tactical one, and that it was okay to quit a tactical plan if it wasn't working, especially if not quitting a tactical plan or objective was actually going to hurt our ability to reach a strategic objective. In this case, how much good was his platoon to the strategic mission now that everyone was dead? The answer is clear, 0. The next iteration of training, I would put him in a similar situation, sometimes even give the exact same scenario in the exact same building. The same thing would happen. The first 2 guys would enter the hallway and be killed. The same thing would happen to the next 2. If the young leader wanted to stay the course again, I would intervene. What are you doing? I would ask. Taking the hallway, he'd respond. You're doing the exact same thing you did last time, I would tell him. But we need to clear this building, and that means getting down this hallway, he'd tell me. What did we just talk about? I would ask, surprised the connection hadn't been made.
Jocko.
I would then see a flicker of thought in his eyes. You mean I should quit? The young officer would say cautiously. You should quit this plan. It isn't going to work. You've already lost 4 guys. I know this is just training and they will be miraculously resurrected after this iteration, but if this were real, that's 4 of your guys dead, gone. You need to rethink this. But I can't just run away. We have a mission, he would say. Okay, take a step back. Detach. Look around. Do you think maybe there's another option? This hallway needs to be cleared. It leads to every room in the building, he would say. The building has to be cleared, and the hallway does lead to every room. But are there any other access points to the room, especially to that room at the end of the hallway with the barricaded shooter? I would ask him. The young officer would sit puzzled for a few seconds. Then I would look at one of the windows and give a quick nod. Windows, he would say. That room has windows. We can go in through there. Good thinking, I would reply with a smile. With that, the young officer would give a quick tasking to 1 or 2 fire teams to move externally around the building and clear the room with the barricaded shooter through the windows. The troops would quickly go into action, throw some grenade simulators into the target room, which would wound or at least startle the barricaded shooter. Then the troops would enter the room through the windows and eliminate him.
20 more, then a break.
The team would learn a new
break.
approach to solving a problem, which is actually an old approach. It is called a flanking maneuver. And more important, the young officer would learn that it is okay to quit. And I get it. Perhaps
Don't quit your drive.
It really should be called a retreat.
Okay.
We aren't giving up completely. We aren't surrendering. We are simply giving up on one approach that isn't working to try another. That is another important way to frame this, by looking at it from a tactical versus strategic perspective. In military parlance, tactical means the immediate situation right in front of you, the actual existing battle that is happening here and now. Strategic is the broad, long-term, overall objective you are trying to achieve. For example, a tactical objective might be trying to take a hill or a section of a city, whereas a strategic objective might be removal of a tyrannical leader who threatens the stability of a region he is in, which creates a clear and present danger. It is okay to quit on a tactical objective. Maybe you don't take that hill or clear that sector of the city right now. Perhaps the enemy was too strong and heavily defending the hill and the city. To secure the objectives would be too costly in men or materiel. So instead, you have to bypass those objectives or put them off until a later date. You have to quit the tactical objective, but you don't quit the strategic mission. If you have made the strategic assessment and decision that this tyrannical leader must be removed for the safety and security of your nation, then you have to drive on. You cannot quit your strategic aims. There are even times when quitting a tactical mission might be a necessity for the success of the strategic mission. General George Washington led the retreat of Continental forces out of New York, an escape that was crucial for the ability of the Revolutionary Army to continue to fight later engagements. A similar situation happened during World War I, after a long campaign in the peninsula of Gallipoli with extensive casualties to the British, Australian, New Zealand, and French forces. The Allies made the decision to abandon the campaign, to quit. But this allowed those troops that were evacuated to be used in other theaters of the conflict, which contributed to the eventual strategic victory for the Allies. And of course, almost everyone knows of the retreat across the English Channel from Dunkirk. Over 300,000 Allied troops were evacuated so they could live to fight another day. They quit the tactical battle and were able to fight on and defeat the Axis powers. These are some of the examples of situations where a leader must decide to quit, to retreat, to abandon a plan, and accept a tactical defeat in order to regroup and come back to fight at a later time for a strategic victory. Sometimes you have to quit on a short-term tactical goal. You have to retreat, but never quit on the strategic mission. Never give up on your long-term strategic goals. Section 4, communication. Keep the troops informed. The primary mode of transportation for SEALs is the foot patrol. Sure, airplanes, helicopters, and boats are how we travel long distances, but 9 times out of 10, the way we make our final approach to a target is the same way soldiers have moved into battle for thousands of years, on our feet. The distance traveled varies depending on the operation. It can be simply the last 100 yards after being dropped off by a helicopter right next to a target, or a patrol can cover scores of kilometers over many days and nights of movement. When the military is portrayed in the movies or on television, foot patrolling usually appears to be a simple, relatively benign action, much like a walk through the park. But foot patrolling is no walk through the park. It is a physically hard, mentally challenging, sometimes painful evolution that can be the most difficult part of an operation. Every member of the patrol is weighed down with weapons, ammunition, helmet and body armor, radios, batteries, grenades, medical gear, food and water, and other special equipment for specific operations. At a minimum, every member of the patrol is carrying 50 to 70 pounds of gear, and at a maximum, the weight carried can approach 120 pounds. Combine that weight with steep and unforgiving terrain, the necessity to move at night with low visibility over long distances, and the stress of needing to stay alert for enemy movement, and patrols can quickly go from simple walks to excruciatingly painful endeavors that sap operators of their energy and morale. As a young SEAL, I went through a block of training called SEAL Tactical Training, or STT, with the rest of the new guys who reported to SEAL Team 1 with me. It was the first thing we did when we got to a SEAL team. The training was supposed to build on the absolute basics we'd learned during BUDS and prepare us to be assigned to a SEAL platoon. In addition to expanding on the basics, the instructor cadre had us learn the fundamentals and then perform the roles of the various jobs in a SEAL platoon to give us an understanding of the positions we might fill. That meant I did patrols as a heavy machine gunner, medic, point man, rear security, or even as the patrol leader. Each one of those jobs placed me in a different position in the order of march of a squad when going on patrol. I was lucky enough to have walked in all the various positions on many patrols before I was assigned a permanent role in my first SEAL platoon as a radio man. In a SEAL squad on a foot patrol, the point man is up front, leading the way, followed by the patrol leader. After the patrol leader is the radio man, then the first machine gunner, then the medic, then another machine gunner, followed by the assistant patrol leader, and finally, rear security. When a SEAL platoon, which consists of 2 SEAL squads, is patrolling together, the squads patrol in sequence, with Squad 1 leading the way and Squad 2 bringing up the rear. So each SEAL's position in the patrol is dictated by their job inside the platoon or squad. Having the opportunity to walk in all those positions taught me a very valuable lesson about leadership. As point man, patrols were physically harder because you were breaking trail, but there was a benefit. You knew what was happening. As point man, you actually steered the patrol. You were up front, constantly looking at your map, checking off terrain features that you had studied, counting your paces so you knew how much distance you had traveled, and regularly assessing exactly where you were and how much further you had to go. The next man in the line of march was the patrol leader. As patrol leader, you also had a good understanding of where you were. In that position, you worked closely with the point man, who had done a map study with you and who would point out prominent landmarks that indicated where you were and how much further you had to go. Whenever the patrol took a break to rest, which was supposed to happen for 10 minutes out of every hour, the point man and patrol leader would study their maps together, shoot bearings with their compasses, and triangulate the exact position of the patrol. The radio man was next in line, located in proximity to the patrol leader so he could provide communication to and from the patrol leader to external supporting assets like aircraft and artillery. Accordingly, the radio man was also well informed. He watched the point man and patrol leader's map study, and he listened as they discussed how much further it was to the target, what terrain the patrol was approaching, and when the patrol would be stopping again. Furthermore, when the patrol leader needed to pass information up the chain of command, like the position of the patrol or the distance to the target, it always went through the radio man, so he was always aware of what was happening. After the radio man was the first machine gunner, and he was often the first level of disconnect in the patrol. Out of earshot of the patrol leader, the machine gunner wouldn't be able to hear any discussions between the point man and the patrol leader. The medic was the next in line, now 5 people back from the front of the patrol. He was barely able to keep a grip on what was happening and where. The medic was followed by the second machine gunner. Often the second machine gunner was so disconnected, he would just blindly follow the man ahead of him. He was followed by another man, and then another, and then another, each separated farther and farther from the point man and the patrol leader, each with less and less information. Eventually, you got to the men in the tail end of the patrol, who had hardly any information. The less information you had in a patrol, the more miserable it was. You wouldn't understand where you were, how much more distance had to be traveled to get to the target, when the next break for rest would come, what terrain features were around. You had no idea if there was a giant hill to climb up or a river to cross. All you could do was put one foot in front of the other and suffer. Morale would diminish, and you could feel the patrol ready to fall apart completely. But the suffering and the lack of morale wasn't the worst part. The worst part was your tactical situation. You had no idea where you were. If the enemy attacked, you wouldn't know where to go. If you got split up from the rest of the platoon, you would be lost. Knowing where you are is the most important piece of information on the battlefield, but you didn't have that. Because I had walked all the different positions, I realized that the farther back in the patrol you were, the less you knew. Every time I served as the point man, patrol leader, or radio man, I understood everything so much more clearly because I was aware of what was happening. When I was on the tail end of a patrol, it was like being in the field with a bag over my head. I hated that feeling. So whenever I served as the patrol leader, both during training operations as a young enlisted SEAL, and then when I eventually became an officer where I served as a squad leader, platoon commander, and task unit commander, I made it my mission to ensure that everyone in the patrol knew exactly what was happening. In the mission briefing, I reinforced the importance of passing signals as we patrolled. I ensured that everyone knew and understood the route we would be taking, with a serious focus on significant terrain features that I knew everyone would be able to easily identify. Then, once on patrol, at each rest stop, I would bring my map around to each man or each team leader and explain where we were, how much further it was to the target, and what terrain features to expect. I would check on their condition too, how much water they had left, how their feet were doing, how tired they were. But it was not only the comfort and welfare of the men I was looking out for. Lack of knowledge on the battlefield is tactically unsound for a squad, platoon, or unit of any size. Troops that know what is happening remain engaged, prepared, and operationally capable of doing their jobs with efficiency and high morale. Uninformed troops are a disaster waiting to happen. This obviously does not only apply to tactical patrols. In any leadership situation, it is critical for the leader to keep everyone on the team as informed as possible. When the team members don't know where they are going, or how much longer they have to go to reach an objective, they are lost. When people are lost, they don't know in which direction to move. They don't understand how their efforts impact the strategic mission. They can no longer effectively do their jobs. Morale plummets. The hardest part of this from a leader's perspective is understanding that the team doesn't always see what you see. Team members aren't given the information that you have, and assuming they do have that information is careless. You have to be proactive in updating your troops. You have to continually keep them abreast of what is happening. And you can't count on them to ask questions either. They might not know what they don't know. Don't assume they know anything. In fact, assume the opposite, that they know nothing, and then take responsibility as the leader to keep the troops informed at all times. Rumor control. If rumors are running rampant in your organization, you have created the environment to allow them to grow. The environment that rumors grow in is one in which there is a lack of information. If you don't tell people what is going on, they will make up their own versions, and their versions will not be pretty ones. So get the word out ahead of the rumors. Just like on a patrol, you need to keep the troops informed. Need to lay some people off? Explain why. Have to discontinue a product? Tell the troops why. Shutting down an office? Communicate the reason to your people. All these subjects are tough to cover. It is easy to find excuses not to talk about them, and it is certainly more comfortable to keep your mouth shut and hope no one notices. But they absolutely will notice, and they will fill in the reasons with their own ideas. Need to lay some people off? The rumor will be, we are going out of business. Have to discontinue a product? Same thing, we are going out of business. Shutting down an office? Now it is certain, we are going out of business. Don't allow this. Get aggressive and attack rumors by getting ahead of the bad news and telling your team what is going on. Be truthful, be direct, and be timely. The longer you wait, the larger the rumors grow, and the harder it is to get back under control. The quicker you share the truth of what is going on, the better it will be received and the fewer problems you will have with rumors. Clear guidance. If your subordinate leaders or frontline troops aren't doing what you want them to do, the first person you should check is yourself. The most likely cause of this problem is unclear or misaligned guidance. Make your guidance to the troops simple, clear, and concise. More guidance does not necessarily make guidance clearer. In fact, more guidance can actually make things more confusing and convoluted. It is also important to ensure that guidance given at every level of leadership is aligned. While there might be differences in the details at different levels of an organization, the guidance that underlies the message must be the same. When I was commander of Task Unit Bruiser deployed to Ramadi, Iraq, the rules of engagement, which were supposed to explain to the troops how and when they should engage the enemy with lethal force, were very complex and difficult to understand. The document was several pages long and filled with verbose legalese. The message was muddled by phrases like enemy military and paramilitary forces, and reasonable certainty that the proposed target is a legitimate military threat. While these phrases might be simple to understand for a mature person sitting in a comfortable place, a young frontline SEAL operator might have trouble remembering what a document said when they read it and parsing out the meaning under the stress of combat conditions and while needing to make a decision that will determine the life or death of another human being. Because of this, I translated the rules of engagement for my team into simple language that could be more easily understood. And it was this: if you have to pull the trigger, make sure the person you are killing is bad. This is as simple as I could make the rules of engagement, and it made sense. When observing people with unknown motives and intentions, it was always difficult to ascertain if they were hostile or not. Those people often acted in suspicious ways and did things that were unexpected. But there was a clear line of hostility when they started to do something offensive toward coalition forces. Once that line is crossed and hostile offensive action is taken by an individual, it's clear that person is bad and needs to be engaged. This is an easy decision for a frontline shooter to make. It was also important that my team understood why it was so important to follow the rules of engagement. So I explained to them, again, very clearly, that if one of them were to kill or injure an innocent civilian, it would have a major negative impact on all our efforts in the campaign. I explained that we were there to protect the civilian populace, so any harm done to them was completely contrary to our mission and was absolutely unacceptable. This guidance was clearly understood by everyone in my task unit, which is the way guidance should be. But it can be hard to ensure that everyone actually comprehends. The best way to ensure that people understand isn't by simply asking them if they understand. Too often, that will just result in people nodding yes because they don't want to admit their lack of comprehension. The best way is to ask them to explain the guidance back to you in their own way. Perhaps even quiz some members of the team on some scenarios that require them to understand the guidance. If they can do this, then they understand. It is also important to communicate guidance through as many channels as possible. Send it in written form, speak to the troops face to face, record a video they can watch repeatedly, repeat the message over conference calls, have your subordinate leadership do the same things. Different people absorb information in different ways. Make sure your guidance is propagated in as many ways as possible so it will impact the variety of people you have on the team in a way they best understand so it can be absorbed by all of them. Because I said so. Because I said so, parents sometimes shout at their children. Clean your room because I said so. Be home by 10 o'clock because I said so. Do the dishes because I said so. Wear a helmet while you are skateboarding because I said so. If you are a parent who uses such language, you might eventually use it with your employees or your subordinates if you aren't careful.
Oh, time flies. Time
In fact,
flies.
you are even wrong to use this language with your children. Let's take the skateboard example. I live by the
10
beach in
minutes.
Southern
I'm gonna answer
California,
some stuff
where
on the
skateboarding
Instagram.
is enormously popular.
Take 10.
The tricks and stunts are almost unbelievable to watch and can be dangerous, with the biggest danger being smacking your head on the pavement. So wearing a helmet is a good idea. If you were to tell a child, wear a helmet because I said so, what are the chances of this being effective? Sure, if you are standing there watching her, imposing the rule on her, she will wear the helmet. But what about when she's a couple of years older and she is skateboarding on her own with her friends? What are the chances she will listen to you then? It won't take long for her to realize that helmets are uncomfortable, they are hot, they are somewhat cumbersome, and, most important, they aren't cool. So as soon as the child is out of your sight, she removes her helmet. Because I said so doesn't carry any weight when I am not around. But what if, instead of just telling your daughter, because I said so, you explained why you wanted her to wear a helmet? If you explained to her the dangers of falling off her skateboard and hitting her head? And then what if you actually took her to a hospital and showed her another kid who had fallen off his skateboard, hit his head, and was now lying in bed with severe brain damage, unable to walk, talk, or feed himself? What if you took your daughter to a graveyard and showed her the grave of a 10 or 11-year-old boy who had died from falling off his skateboard and hitting his head? Would that leave an impression? Absolutely. Your daughter would be much more likely to wear a helmet and even tell her friends to wear helmets. The difference is actually explaining the why it is important for her to do what you are asking her to do. Because I said so is clearly not the best way to get someone to do what you want them to do, and it is not a good way to lead. That might seem obvious, but because I said so gets used in many forms, like it's my call, or this is my project, or I outrank you. All of these are just another form of because I said so. And they all are about the equivalent in terms of their leadership effectiveness. That is to say, not very effective at all. None of those statements will get your subordinates to put forth their best effort to accomplish the mission. They will simply be carrying out orders and will not execute with any real enthusiasm or tenacity because they don't really understand why they are doing what they are doing. Don't lead like that. Instead, explain to your subordinates why they are doing something. Explain why it is done a certain way. Give them the reason why a task, maneuver, or procedure is important and how it not only affects the team, the company, and the mission, but also how it affects them. There is another reason not to say, because I said so.
Yeah,
And that is
YouTube.
because
I'm
you might
contacting
be
you.
wrong. If one of your
I see
subordinates
there's a
asks
few of
why
you out
are
there.
asking them to do
Hopefully
something a
you're
certain
drawing.
way, and the only reason you can give is
Look at this,
because I said so,
setup again.
this is an indicator that you don't know the reason why. And if you don't know why you are doing something, then why are you doing it? I was working with a tech hardware company that was trying to get their first major project launched. Like many young companies, they were understaffed and undermanned, but they had a job to do. I was explaining to a large group of engineers and the executive team, including the CEO, how important it was to understand why you were doing what you were doing. I told the frontline engineers that if they didn't understand why they were doing what they were doing, they needed to ask their supervisor. One of the engineers asked, "What if my supervisor doesn't know?" I replied, "Then ask your supervisor's supervisor." "And what if they don't know?" the engineer shot back. "Then ask the next one up, and then the next one, and then the next one," I replied. Then I looked at the CEO, and I said, as the CEO of this company trying to deliver this piece of equipment to market, do you want anyone in this organization working on something if not one single person on the team can explain why it is important? Absolutely not, the CEO responded. Absolutely not. With the amount of work needed to make this launch happen, we need every single
I'm
person working
so
on critical
chicken to
tasks.
do that right
If
now.
no one in your chain of command can explain why something is important to the
Chicken
execution
about
of
that
this
head.
mission, then I don't want you doing it. So, explaining why not only ensures the frontline troops can execute with understanding, it is also a way of ensuring the frontline troops aren't wasting time and resources on things that don't matter. And because I said so, defeats all that benefit. So if you find yourself saying, "Because I said so," stop, assess, and give your subordinates and yourself real reason why.
5 minutes.
The thread of why.
5 minutes.
I had just addressed the majority of the workforce from a large corporation I was working with. I introduced the laws of combat and the principles of extreme ownership. When I was done, the CEO of the company got up and made a speech explaining that the company had turned around and actually made money for the first time in 2 years. A good amount of money, too. And that this profit had made the shareholders very happy. He was clearly excited about this. But he didn't quite get the reaction he'd expected from the crowd. They sat and listened quietly, with no cheers or applause to meet his passion. Just awkward silence. Not at all a reflection of his enthusiasm. By the time he was done, there was an obvious gap between his attitude and the crowd's. He walked off stage confused by the reaction of his company. I could see by the look on his face he was surprised that this group of employees and leaders weren't excited about this incredible turnaround that the company had undergone and by the profits that had been delivered to the shareholders. The CEO, the COO, and I walked back to the CEO's office to debrief. "That didn't go the way I expected it to," the CEO said. "Me neither," added the COO. "My fault," I said. "I should have reviewed your speech and thought a little more about it." "What was wrong with my speech?" asked the CEO. "It was nothing but good news. We've cut expenses, gotten rid of unneeded personnel, and I even explained the why, like you recommended. The fact that we are doing this all to become profitable. And we were successful in doing just that, becoming profitable for the first time in 2 years. What's not to like?" the CEO said. He was right. From his perspective, this was all good news. The problem was that he didn't understand how his words sounded from the perspective of the troops, and I had failed to listen and assess that beforehand. So I told him, "The problem isn't that it wasn't good news. It's that from their perspective, it looks different. I've been working with your frontline leaders and managers for the last couple of months, and they see and hear things differently. When you say we've cut costs, they hear You got rid of some of the supplies and resources we relied on to do our jobs. When you say we got rid of unneeded personnel, they hear you fired my friends, and now we are even more undermanned than we have ever been. Even when they hear your reason why we are profitable for the first time in 2 years, they hear some stockholder somewhere is making money off the hard work and sacrifice we are making to get the job done.
2 minutes.
Their perspective is very different from yours, so it needs to be framed in a way that makes sense to them. I could see the CEO recognize the truth in what I was saying. But the message is what it is, he said. The facts are the facts, and this is a positive message. How can I frame it any better? The company makes money, and that money goes back to the shareholders. That's the way it works. Like I said, I told them, you need to frame it from their perspective. There has to be a thread that connects the why back to them. That thread looks something like this. We were profitable for the first time in 2 years. What this means is we can put more money back into advertising. The more advertising we do, the more leads we get. The more leads we get, the more customers we get. More customers means more sales. More sales means a lower cost to produce our product. The lower the cost to produce, the lower and more competitive price point we can offer. The lower the price point, the more we sell, which once again will lower our cost to produce, which will make us even more money we can put back into advertising to generate even more sales. And what this cycle means to everyone in this room is growth of the company. And growth of the company means not only long-term job security, but also opportunity for increased responsibility, for increased leadership, and to make more money. That is why profitability is important to everyone in this room. When this company succeeds, every member on this team succeeds as well, professionally and financially. So thank you all for your hard work and dedication. When the individual wins, the team wins, and when the team wins, the individual wins as well. It didn't take any further explanation. The CEO got it. All right, I need to send out an email to the troops explaining the why better. Maybe even a video. I missed the mark, but I can fix it. You can indeed, I told him. And we got to work putting together communication to the entire company, further explaining the why. This is a lesson learned for any leader. Explaining the why is important, but the why has to tie back and connect to everyone in the chain of command. Success for corporate or profit for shareholders is not great motivation for everyone. You have to think about how the mission and outcomes benefit the whole team.
I'm finding I don't need this much time, but as I progress in my ability to put more things down in the right place in less time, I will need that time more to bring it to a more fully finished render. I have yet to bring anything in 3 hours to that level, maybe 4 to 6, but
this mission will
always
disrupt
learning,
the enemy's
always
mortar
changing,
attacks on our base.
always trying to
Or
improve here.
this mission will put a
So,
dent in the enemy's ability to gather intelligence and stage assaults on us. Or one from the bigger picture, something like if we can stop the enemy here on their turf, they won't ever get the chance to attack our turf, which means our families will be safe. No matter what the mission or the goal, the troops need to understand how it will positively impact them. So make sure the thread of why explains that to them in no uncertain terms. Tactfully delivering the truth. When delivering criticism, it is important to do it with consideration and delicacy. If you punch someone in the face with criticism, they will become defensive and are unlikely to take the criticism on board. So a more indirect approach is needed. First, care about your people. If you truly care about them, they will know that, and they will accept your criticism more easily. Next, take ownership of the problem. Of course, extreme ownership should be the fundamental principle used by any leader, and there are tactics of employing extreme ownership when trying to critique a subordinate. Utilizing extreme ownership while providing feedback might sound like this. Instead of saying, you failed to get the project done on time, use what support or assets could I have given you so that we could have gotten the project done on time. Instead of saying you failed to meet the mission objective, try using I don't think I did a good job of explaining the mission objective. Did you fully understand it? Instead of saying your lack of professionalism caused this client to go to our competitor, try saying I think I've allowed things to get too slack around here in terms of our professionalism, and I think that's one of the reasons we lost that client to one of our competitors. It is important to note that these are not simply techniques you are utilizing so your pesky subordinate falls into line. That is not the point. The point of all these statements and the whole point of taking ownership is that you must truly believe what you are saying. And you should, because the ownership statements in those examples are not simply lip service. They are true. If a leader follows up with team members and makes sure they have all the support and assets needed to complete the job on time, then it will be done on time. If the leader correctly explains the mission in a simple, clear, concise manner, and then ensures it is understood by the team will accomplish the mission. If a leader fails to emphasize the importance of professionalism, then it should come as no surprise that subordinates fail to act professionally. I'm often asked if there are any scenarios when the leader is not fully responsible for the performance of his or her team. The answer is no. If a team is not performing, then it is the leader's fault. The leader has not trained and mentored the team members to where they can accomplish the mission. If the team doesn't have time to train, then the leader has not made training a priority or run it up the chain of command to get the support needed. If members of the team are simply incapable of performing the duties required of them, then the leader hasn't done his or her job of removing the substandard performers. Ownership is real, and when utilized correctly, the concept of ownership will spread. When a leader says, what support or assets could I have given you so that we could have gotten the project done on time? Usually, a subordinate will say something like, well, boss, I could have used another person on one section of the project, but the reality is, if I would have done a better job planning and utilized my man hours more efficiently, we would have finished on time. It won't happen again, boss. Just like that, the problem is solved. But, of course, there are situations when the subordinate in question does not respond to indirect criticism. In those cases, it is necessary to escalate the directness of the critique. It is still not a license to be overly harsh. Leaders should maintain tact even when providing more direct critique. Here are some examples of slightly more direct approaches that still don't attack the individual. Instead of saying, what support or assets could I have given you so that we could have gotten the project done on time, a more direct critique would be, this is your project, and you are the one I trust to drive it to an on-time completion. What else do you need to ensure that happens? Instead of saying, I don't think I did a good job of explaining the mission objective, did you fully understand it? A more direct critique might sound like, you were the leader of this mission and we didn't achieve the objective. Did you not understand what the objective was and the importance of it? If not, what can I do to ensure 100% that next time you do understand it? Instead of saying, I think I've allowed things to get slack around here in terms of our professionalism, and I think that's one of the reasons why we lost that last client to one of our competitors, an escalation in this critique might be more along the lines of, I think I've allowed things to get too slack around here. As a leader, you need to hold the line as well. A lack of professionalism just won't cut it in this business. That more direct approach may very well solve the problem. But if it doesn't, and further escalation is necessary, a leader might have to explain that if the situation is not rectified, the subordinate will be written up. If that doesn't work, then the leader will have to follow through and give written counseling to the subordinate, documenting for the subordinate exactly what the problem is, what the expectations are, what corrective measures need to be taken, and the consequences of failing to meet those expectations. Once this full escalation of counseling has taken place, there's not much left for a leader to do. If the individual continues to fail to meet standards, it is the leader's duty to remove the individual from that position and either put them in a position they are capable of or remove them completely from the team. Balancing praise. When I was commander of Task Unit Bruiser, we were doing our pre-deployment workup training cycle, which consisted of different tactical training blocks preparing us for a combat deployment. One of the most dynamic and intense blocks of training is called Close Quarters Combat, or CQC. This training consists of moving through buildings tactically, clearing them of enemy personnel, marshaling innocent people, recovering any hostages, and safely departing the building. We train with live fire ammunition, live explosive breaches, and even live sniper shots. Altogether, it makes for some high-stress training that demands top performance from every member of the team. We had a solid task unit. Our leadership was smart and engaged. Our mid-level SEALs were freshly returned from combat deployments. Our new guys were humble and eager. We put in extra time and effort to be ready. Before the training even started, we were reviewing and rehearsing the standard operating procedures we would use to clear buildings. We followed the 4 laws of combat. We always utilized cover and move. We kept our plans and communication simple. We identified our biggest problems and prioritized and executed on them. And we operated with fully decentralized command, which allowed every member of the team to act based on their understanding of the mission statement and the commander's intent, and to make decisions that supported the mission. The principles worked well. During run after run through the Kill House, which is a vast building with ballistic walls that SEALs and other special operations groups utilize to rehearse CQC, we did well. Of course, many individual mistakes were made, and we didn't always perform perfectly as a team. But when we did make mistakes, either from a personal or a leadership perspective, we always owned them, figured out solutions, and implemented them as quickly as possible. When an individual had a problem, the whole team rallied around that individual, invested extra time, and got them up to speed. As we approached the end of our second week, the instructor cadre threw a massively complex problem at us. Multiple buildings, multiple simultaneous breaches, dynamic movement. It was chaos. But the task unit grabbed a hold of the chaos and got control of it. Problems were solved. Targets were hit. And the problem was solved quickly, carefully, and efficiently. We were doing well. But then, disaster struck. Not in the form of enemy personnel or an even more complex problem, but a disaster of our collective egos. After we finished the complex problem, we gathered around the instructor cadre for the debrief. They mentioned a few minor mistakes, but then the senior instructor, an experienced and respected Master Chief, stood up and blurted out, "This is the best task unit we've ever had come through here. You guys are absolutely crushing this." A couple of hoots let loose from the task unit. There was an audible joy in hearing those words, but they made me instantly shudder. I was worried that egos would soar and guys would lose focus. "I wish you hadn't said that," I said as I walked by the Master Chief. "They're going to let down their guard." He shook his head and replied, "They'll be fine." I wish he'd been right, but he wasn't. The next run through the Kill House was an unmitigated disaster. Guys missed targets. They didn't clear corners or follow other simple standard operating procedures. The head counts were off. Assaulters got bogged down in hallways and rooms. The clearance took an eternity. It was a failure, the complete opposite of the iteration we had just completed, which was all but flawless. Now we were a mess. Once again, we surrounded the cadre for a debrief. The instructors hammered us about a litany of mistakes and errors, both on the individual and on the leadership level. But none of them hit on the real problem, so I chimed in at the end of the brief. "You want to know what happened?" I asked the task unit. No one responded. "I'll tell you. You got complacent." The Master Chief gave us all an incredible compliment after that last run, and that was really nice of him, and sometimes it's nice to get some positive feedback. But there was a major problem. You all took it to heart. You believed it and lost focus, all of you. Me too. We lost our humility. We all let our guards down, and we fell apart. Now let's go back in there and annihilate this target with aggression, with with precision and with vengeance. No slack at all. Zero. Any questions? No one said a word. All right then, let's lock and load and go do this the way it's supposed to be done. And that is exactly what we did. We got back on track and performed at the level we were capable of. The lesson had been learned, or should I say, relearned, as I had seen this happen time and time again during my service in the SEAL teams. You have to use caution when you dole out praise. Too much praise, and people, consciously or unconsciously, back off their efforts just a little bit. Multiply that times a whole team of people, and you get a negative impact. Of course, there is a dichotomy. Praise should be given when warranted, but it should be given judiciously, and it should be tempered with a goal that requires the team to still push. Instead of, this is the best task unit we've ever seen come through here, try, this is the best task unit we've ever had come through here, and if you push harder, you will set a new standard. Let's see if you can shave another 2 minutes off your clearance time. That way, the team members have something to strive for. They will want to go even harder. At the same time, it is also important not to become the leader who is never satisfied. If you move the goalposts farther down the field every time the team does something well, that can dampen morale as well. The team members will eventually become jaded and stop putting forth full effort since they know they will never actually win. One thing I always did to mitigate excessive praise was to direct praise at individuals instead of at the team. Instead of saying, team, you did an amazing job on that operation, I would call out specific people. Mike, nice job getting that room with all the obstacles in it cleared. And Jim, outstanding work marshaling those civilians. You handled that perfectly. And the three of you locking down the backside of that target did an awesome job. Individual praise would let everyone know that I was impressed when things went well. But it was not a blanket statement that everyone would get to enjoy. To be recognized by me, you had to bring your A game. When I retired, I heard stories from guys about how they were always looking for my praise, doing their best in the hope that I would give them a compliment of some kind. When I did, they would feel like they earned it. Then they would go out and try and earn it again and again, continually trying to do their best work. And it showed, because when you multiply that attitude across a whole team, the results speak for themselves. So remember, praise is a tool, but it is a tool that must be wielded with caution. Too much, and it can cause people to let up and rest on their laurels. Too little, and the team can lose hope. Which also means that if your team members are losing hope and their morale is fading, some well-placed compliments can go a long way. And if you see your troops getting overconfident, a few critical remarks can put them in check. Either way, remember that when you are a leader, your words will impact the behavior of your subordinates and the team more than you might think. Think before you speak and measure your words carefully. Hope. We hope the weather holds. Hopefully the enemy doesn't have any sentries in that position. We are hoping the competitors don't try to grab any market share in that area. Statements like these are obviously not good. As we said in the military, hope is not a course of action. You cannot rely on hope. You have to plan. You have to consider contingencies. You have to stack the deck in your favor. You cannot have hope playing a role in planning or execution. But hope does play a role in leading and in winning. While hope must not be a course of action or a pillar of planning, it must be present in the hearts and minds of the people executing the mission. If there is no hope for relief or success or victory, the will cannot endure. Without hope, there will be surrender. This is why you are responsible for sustaining and maintaining hope within the team. Explain to the team that victory is possible. Explain how it will be achieved. If victory is too far in the distance, designate some shorter-term victories that can be achieved so the team knows it can win and, through that knowledge, maintain hope. In cases where victory is impossible but retreat is not an option, explain how driving on, even in the face of imminent defeat, is a victory in its own right. Holding the line and giving everything will at least build your reputation as a team. And with that reputation, each and every member can go on to their next chapter with their heads held high, ready for the next challenge. And that attitude is hope enough to fight on. Ultimatums. Ultimatums are not optimal leadership tools. Like digging in, they allow no room to maneuver. No one likes being trapped and controlled. But there are extremely rare times when ultimatums can and should be utilized, when enough is truly enough. Then an ultimatum can be used, and when it is used, the leader must hold the line and adhere to it. Never make an ultimatum you can't keep. Making an ultimatum as the boss. If you feel you have to issue an ultimatum to your subordinates, one of the first things you should ask yourself is, where did my leadership fail? Because the fact of the matter is, as a leader, you should be able to get what you need out of your subordinates through solid leadership, not ultimatums. Explaining why a task is important to the strategic mission and how achieving that mission will ultimately benefit everyone on the team should be enough to get people to do what they need to do. That is no easy feat, and sometimes it takes considerable time and effort to communicate that information properly. But sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you can't get the message through. In those cases, ultimatums are a tool of last resort after all other efforts to get an individual to do what they are supposed to do have failed. Once an ultimatum has been delivered, it cannot be reversed, which is one of the biggest problems with giving them. Ultimatums, by their very nature, are immovable and cannot be adjusted. This makes the people you delivered them to feel trapped, and no one likes feeling trapped. If you do make an ultimatum and do not keep it, your credibility will take a hit. All that being said, if you have done everything in your power, if you have coached, mentored, and persuaded an individual to do something and they still will not do it, then it might make sense to give them an ultimatum. Make it explicit, not only in the requirements of what needs to be done, but also in the consequences of exactly what will happen if the ultimatum is not met. Use no uncertain terms and ensure that the individual fully understands. While utilizing ultimatums for an individual can make sense in some rare cases, they should be used even more rarely on teams. If you put an ultimatum on a team for something it must do collaboratively, some members might change their attitudes and performance, while others might not. If that happens, you will be stuck trying to decipher who tried to make adjustments and who didn't, which will be challenging. Instead, if it is absolutely necessary to impose an ultimatum on a collective effort, place it squarely on the leader. Then, the leader can work with the team to deliver, or not, and bear out the repercussions. If the team gets the job done, the leader will know who on the team got on board and who didn't, and can deal with the team members accordingly. If the team fails to get the job done and deliver on the ultimatum, you as the boss know exactly who to deal with, the leader of the team. Making an ultimatum as a subordinate. An ultimatum is a threat in the power play, so making one up the chain of command is a high-risk move. An obvious example of this is when a subordinate says, if I don't get a promotion, I'm leaving the company. Most bosses are not going to like that at all. Instead of putting an ultimatum on your boss, perhaps you should try to figure out why you aren't getting promoted in the first place. Maybe you aren't doing the job as well as you think you are. Maybe other candidates for promotion are performing better. Maybe someone else is senior to you. Maybe the company isn't promoting anyone. Maybe you just don't deserve to get promoted yet. Whatever the case may be, there's very little chance that making a demand for promotion is going to work. And even if it does, and you do get promoted, there will be damage done. You have revealed the limits of your loyalty to the team, and you have placed the importance of your own promotion above the importance of the team and the mission. That will be remembered. This
You are
same
watching me
underlying
right
negative
now?
essence will be in just about any ultimatum that is made up the chain of
Really?
command. Instead of making an ultimatum, have legitimate discussions with your boss and explain your position and your thoughts. But don't make ultimatums up the chain of command. Now, if there is some rare situation in which you have completely exhausted every possible option to inform your boss of an outcome and it is not getting through, and you are actually going to go through with an alternative solution, then it makes sense to let your boss know. But I would think of it as a warning, not an ultimatum. If you have been fighting for a promotion and done all the right things, asked all the right questions, been in position long enough, and are factually the best candidate, then it might be okay to let your boss know. You say, boss, I've been here for 6 years, I really love being here, and I want to continue to work here, but I also have a family to support and provide for, and I need to do what is right for them. I know there are other opportunities in other companies for me to advance, even though I don't want to. If I can't get some upward mobility here, I might have to start looking at some alternative companies where I can further my career. That is about as gentle as you can make it. But many bosses will still be offended by it. That is why you shouldn't do this unless you have to. And you should not do it unless you mean it. Make sure you know without a shred of doubt that there are other opportunities out there that you can.
The book was good. Let's see if it shuts down this classroom music. I'm not talking about the rest of this stuff. Alright. Internet keeps dropping. Very annoying. I want to wash my hands. So this timer's going to go back on again here. No. There we go. "20 seconds. Whoa! Okay. I'm going to try to turn off this classical music as requested by Rita to not have sound. I just got to find out where that sound is coming from. Oh, here. Well, let's go like this. All right. I guess I'm running a democracy here. So, we have 2 more 20-minute sessions. As you can see, I have completely avoided the head. And the problem now is that I'm so dirty. So dirty. But, oh well. 20 minutes. I'm going to have to just jump in and do the head now. Because if I don't do it in this sitting, he will be a headless man. So the ear is directly above the achromium process. If you know your landmarks, and you should learn them, you'll see that I have to move the ear over. And then don't forget to squint your eyes constantly. There, that's it. That's critiquing. Let's draw. Brian has such a great jawline. He looks to me like a Roman centurion. Centurion! Strike! Hail roughly! You have the name, you know. Biggest. Oh, Monty Python. Okay. The Life of Brian. It's a great Easter film. Much better than Tiger King, or whatever that show's called. What? Someone's leaving a message somewhere. Okay. Put it here. I'm getting chicken about this eyebrow. Good. Okay, just going for it. Brow to chin halfway is the tip of the nose. In this case, when you have a nose at this angle, it looks, the abstract shape looks on the shadow of the tip of the nose, it looks a lot like how I would draw a bird in a landscape. So just think abstract shapes and angles. Simplify the data. There's a video that Luke lent me about one of his favorite artists, Morgan Weisling. And he had brought out his daughter's yearbook, young daughter, and he said, "Honey, can you tell me who this is? Can you tell me who this is?" And even though the pictures were only like 1 inch big, she was still able to have facial recognition. And that was to teach the lesson of big, simple shapes, you know, from far away, because even in your yearbook, you can still recognize people. So your drawing needs to do the same thing. put his nose far enough down. Did so nicely. Ryan's a little bit bigger than in the jaw than the norm. So from the chin to the nose is the bottom of the lip, halfway. But in his case, I move it up a little bit higher than the halfway point. Just because he's got more mandible, more jaw, masculine. Arnold Schwarzenegger is like that, and so is Clint Eastwood. He would probably really like that I was saying that right now. Yeah, that doesn't look bad. shadows on his forehead that describe the shape nicely there. Switching the Conte. I need more black. More dark. No spaghetti hair. Just make sure you draw the shapes and the texture. Five minutes. Ah! No, that's 2 tonight. Oh Lord, being too rough. Too rough. Still, it's not too small enough to use here. One minute. Looking more like him. Sorry. More angular here. I'll do a little bit more touch up there. So after this break, I got 20 minutes to bring this together. Maybe do a little more on the background or something. You can see the image there. I'm getting close. I spent a lot of time here. I feel like this is the most interesting area for me, focal point. So I got 5 minutes. I'm going to wash my hands. I'll fix these 2 very sad broken pencils so that I can finish it. Ah, heartbreaking. Even after all these years, it still happens to me. So 5, 6 seconds. Take a 5-minute break. 6 minutes, actually. I'm going to set this camera up a little bit. We're getting there. We are getting there. Hello, all you wonderful people following along. Maybe you're drawing. Maybe you're not. Now, we sharpen. All this Instagram streaming I've been doing used up my entire data plan. I had to pay an extra 80 bucks because the Wi-Fi here is not very stable. So I'm paying that money for you guys to see this for free. Maybe it's boring. It would be to me. I'd rather be drawing personally. Maybe you just start drawing too and you can just listen to the beats of this little timer as we go. If you want any of the reference images, they are on the Atelier Artista website. You can help support me. I'd like to pay another model to pose, but that takes money. So anything is greatly appreciated. Oh, I have tons of pencils ready. I miss all you guys who would sit in the room with me on Wednesdays and Tuesdays. This is not as fun. But it's a practice, and we all have to keep up our practice. An athlete must continue to train, and so too an artist. Artists tend not to like the metaphors with athletes. Maybe because when we were in high school, it was the artists versus the jocks. But there are some good things to the athletic temperament that artists can definitely take from. And that is discipline. My whole life I didn't like team sports. My mom put me into martial arts, which is not really a team sport at all, but the classes are kind of a team. And we would do our warm-ups, we would do our stretches, and I feel like artists need to do the same thing. Keeping consistent is a good way to grow. You can track your progress, right? Just like weights. You start at 5 pounds, you get up to 50. But if you just try to jump in, lift up 100 pounds, you're going to get injured. But in the arts, rather than, you breaking something or ripping a muscle, it's your spirit, it's your tender little artist inside. It's that 7-year-old creative that lives deep in your subconscious, gets so badly bruised, you decide not to do it. You can only really get fulfillment in things that are difficult or take a lot of practice. If you just picked up a guitar and could play any song, do you think you would keep doing it? Probably not, especially if everyone could do it. This is a worthwhile practice. Those of you who are doing it, you get your own attainments and fulfillment from within. Can't sell you on that. The great thing is being able to see as an artist sees. It might not even be the control of the pencil. If you can see as an artist sees, you change your whole life. You change everything. Maybe even not for the better. Hey, you stare off into space for long periods of time. But there's joy in it. Love just looking at art books. This is just practice. This is why I just do it on the cheapest possible newsprint. None of these drawings are meant to live. I mean, you might see them and like them, but they go in the recycler. Every year, before they get completely done, I sell these drawings off because they're not archival for my November charity campaign. $25. You can own an original drawing, and all of it goes to charity, for men's health. So you could wait. Maybe this one will still be around by that point in time. They yellow. They slowly degrade. But for me, it's just the weekly practice that's important, not the making of something saleable. The skill you got to keep up. And now we're going to keep it up for 25. Whoa. You know what? I'm going for a full 30 here. This model doesn't care. They don't need a break. We're going to go right until 9 o'clock. If you're drawing along, try to get it finished. Share it, tag it, post it, email it to me if you want critique. People have been taking smart advantage of me and sending emails with their work because we're closed and I'm still a useful teacher. Okay, I gotta wash my hands. I can't possibly draw like this. Hey, I'll wave. Hello, hello, welcome. Hey, what the hell? Don't look at me. Look at the drawing. Wash my hands. 30 minutes. Let's do it. Do it, do it, do it. So, got some shapes. Need to fortify the lines, hard, and hard, soft, and also light, dark. So I'm going for contrast and simplification of shapes now. There's some highlights on his shoulder. So squint your eyes down if you're doing this. Squint, 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 squint. But squint only to see the brightest parts. Oh, that's surprisingly bright down there. We're always saying squint around here, but there's different levels of squinting. You're not always squinting the same amount. Sometimes you're squinting to see the lights, other times you're squinting to simplify and see the darks. Or the half tones even. Alright, that helps it pop a little bit more. When the model's actually here, at this point, they're starting to get really shiny. Because believe it or not, standing still is incredibly difficult work. And so you can start seeing the high points in the highlights. Kind of the center parts. The highlight is never right on the edge. It's always over in the max. A lot of people, they'll put the highlight right to the edge, and it looks really bad. It makes it look like a flat plate rather than a rounded form. Oh, yeah. Reflected light. I'm doing a little cheating here. Don't do spaghetti hair, meaning we don't draw every single hairline, but do texture. Makes it look like you did a lot more work than you actually did. Put some texture in there. So I'm just going to move down from his head down now. I got everything where I want it, and I'm just going to harden up cast shadow lines, maybe increase some contrast areas. This is a really drawerly, like I start to put lines in, cross contours, just intensifying the edge work. Maybe even at this point, I don't want to be repairing big mistakes. Hopefully I don't have any. Drawing the ear details in, but it's a detail time. So you can do what the brain naturally wants to do now, but that you've been trying to avoid the whole time. Which is drawing what you know. Or what you think you know. And this little tree needs a friend. Ah, there he is. Happy little. Never can make any mistakes. Only dark and light. The only mistake you can make is not drawing right now. Not doing what you want in life. Enough of the ball brass. so light. So I just put dark beside, that makes something seem brighter. Just put more material. More material on top. So glad I sharpened this up a bit. Gotta get this good enough to make Mom proud. Maybe the model. He wants to see a good drawing. He's not standing like this forever so that you can suck. Let's get better so that when we come back from our extra long weekend, so cast shadows, you want to be firm and hard. Firm being the very tip, or sorry, hard being the very tip, firm being just over the edge. You have to, drawing still, like, no matter if you're doing as realistic as you can, you're still translating this stuff. So we got to use the tool to do that. What can it do? Check out on the Atelier Artista YouTube, and you can see all the warm-ups that I use. All right, space there. Turn this off. So this part, foreshadows, darker. Makes the form really pop, this one. Because of all that softening done earlier. This one's really hard. I don't know if you guys can hear it on my side. It's very loud, but we still got the guys cleaning the floor at C-Space. It's not completely, I mean, the social distancing, I haven't seen the cleaner, but I can hear him out there. Okay, I'm doing detail work, so I'm going to bring this camera a little bit closer. This is what we want, right? Details, details. Let's go. Let's go. Whoa! Sorry, guys, don't puke. It's not Carnival Cruise after all. This is a dollar store holder, so it sucks. It really sucks. When I bought this holder, I didn't know we were going to be in lockdown. All right. Okay. 18 minutes still. Holy, I got so much time and all the time in the world. Cast shadow right here, hard edge. So it blends with the core. And this isn't a hard rule. This works for me. Put the See the back kind of disappeared on this one. Cast shadow. Alright. Okay. The other time you use a line is overlap. When you want to show something in this arm is in front of that leg, I'll use it there too. This is cast shadow. It doesn't hurt to draw it as a harder line. Here's a cast shadow, but it's far away. The further it gets, the softer it gets. So it becomes more firm. If it's very, very close, it's very, very hard. Sharp line is what I mean by hard. And really, you don't have to know all the anatomy here. You just draw what you see, and part of that, I mean, yeah, it helps to learn anatomy, but all drawing is just a sophisticated use of the basics. I think I could probably teach the basics in an hour and a half, and I'm still doing them. This is the story of my life. Just trying to get better at them. Things get more complicated, but they all still the same thing. Think, what can a pencil do? Light, dark, soft, hard, fat, thin, big, small. Jeez, not much to it. This could all be better. Straight and curved. How about that? There we go. Everything is contrasting. That's what creates visual interest. Straight, curved. Hands. I like to keep hands a little more abstract. Wait, sorry guys. Drawing down, you can't even see it. I like to draw hands really abstract. There's not much to this. Like, I'm not drawing the anatomy of the hand at all. Just the shapes, shadow shapes. Same as how you get all those veins. Like, if you thought about all that, it would be it'd be really difficult to do. Maybe the flat of the finger there. But if you put too much detail in this hand too early on, you're hooped. See, a lot of people, they mostly put too much effort into the hands. And then you look at the drawing. The drawing as a whole is very distracting. All you see is super high detail hand. As if you're like this. You look at the whole person, but you're just staring at their hand. That would be creepy in real life. I'm looking at the negative space of this shit now. See the difference once I erase that out? That's what draws the finger. Not me. Not my effort. So I took a class with Henry Yan. I went down to Swinton's, met the man. I couldn't get into his first class, but I went for dinner with him, and he, Mr. Miyagi, me. I was like, how long, Henry, will it take for me to be as good a drawer as you? And he said something like, just draw for an hour every day of the week. I can do that. And I said, well, and then it will take 10 years, right? Like, I said, well, what if I draw every single day 5 hours? And he said something to the degree of, then it will take you 50 years. And then he told me to draw 50 hours a week. And I saw him last year, and I told him the same story, and he laughed his ass off because he had forgotten. Basically, he was bullshitting me. Maybe it's the 10,000 hour thing, I don't know. I've been drawing over 3 years straight, every Wednesday. And honestly, you can look at my Instagram, and you can just scan through it. Even when I opened this atelier, I wasn't a very good realistic drawer. Like, I knew the rules, but practice is making me more effective. You know, I got a long ways to go for what I'm after, but everything's just continual learning. Turn. Oh, still 10 whole minutes? Easy peasy. I do want to spend a little more on time on this background here. When am I going to learn that I hate this cheap paper? You gotta have the smooth newsprint for these tools to glide across. You can see how toothy this stuff is. It's just not doing what I want. So to fix it, I use something I got at on sale at Shoppers, some sort of makeup sponge or something. Works nice. Softens it up. But on the smooth paper, you wouldn't have to do this extra step. You'd have more time to do the things you really want. Let's add some spine shadow. Vertebrae there. The pieces. This is part of the, I think they call it like the dimples of Venus or whatever. Dimples of Venus. I'll try to draw a cat face. Putting more material at the very end here. Harden up this line. Show a little distance. Here, lost edge though. Here too. Just disappears into the background. Nice, this is a dirty drawing. That's what I would do if I was painting. Just turn the thing. Can't turn the model on his head. Or, 9 more minutes. Plenty of time to fuck everything up. So I'm going the opposite direction now, trying to give myself a little bit of a cross-hatching basket weave. Let's give it some more texture. I'm going to soften it anyways with that. That helps to ensure that there's some darkness going in both parts of the texture of the paper. Background needs to be blurred. Just a little bit. It's far away. Shouldn't be in as much detail. Now, put some more cash shadow down here. Okay. Cameras. Too much to worry about here. Five minutes. That's not good. Yeah, 5 minutes. Line up a little bit. Bring back this. A little bit. All right. Get resituated here. My YouTube list. We're almost there. Almost there. Okay, sorry guys, I'm wrong way. Thank y'all. Flipping. Thank you. Thanks for taking a look. Yep. That's fine. Okay. Getting close to being done. 4 minutes. 4 minutes left on the riding line. Yeah, darken up some of these cast shadows. Cast shadows allow the object to appear to come off the picture plane a little more. Oh, I missed one. There we go. This one back here. Helps determine the lifting up of the subject off the picture plane and describes the throw of the light. So it fortifies the core turning on this thing. I love hard cast shadows. Comes from some of my classical training. You know, the Caravaggio kind of contrapposte, chiaroscuro, linea, a little bit of Italian. And also pizza and Ninja Turtles. Michelangelo, Leonardo, Donatello, and Raphael. Two minutes remain. I'm going to go right off the page with this one. Take a little look back. A lot of reflected light on his back in this drawing here. I think there's this big open space here. That might be a nice place for a signature. We'll see. Got a minute left here. Okay, thanks. It's happening. We're almost there. What? It looks better in person, I swear. So, minute left. It's been a great Wednesday night. As always, keeping up the practice. Let me just show you the hat here. I got a bunch of these made. I can't operate in reverse. Okay. 25 seconds. I think this bad boy's getting a signature. It's what, April 15th? 2020. Booyah! Okay, well, I'm going to take a photo of this right away and post it. You can see what it looks like straight on because the angle's a little strange. Thank you for all those who joined me and followed along. I'm here doing this every single Wednesday, 6 until 9. I also have a Friday free figure class where I'll be teaching how to draw the skeleton and bones on a model. 11 a.m. Friday on the Atelier Artista YouTube. Take it, man. It's free, guys. I'm giving this stuff away just so I can leave a legacy. Anyways, thanks for joining me. Ciao for now.